Let's get to see Chief Data Analyst Harry Enten. We're not even exactly talking about the candidates here, which is why it might be even more important.
No, mind blown, to quote the show Blossom Joey. Whoa! I mean, look at this. Okay, share of Texas midterm primary ballots at this point in the cycle cast in Democratic primaries or Republican primaries. In 2022, the last midterm, overwhelmingly, the votes were being cast in Republican primaries, 62%. But look at what's going on now in the 2026 cycle. More votes are being cast on the Democratic side. What a shift from where we were 4 years ago at this point. More people in Texas picking up the Democratic ballot.
More Democrats are voting in Texas than Republicans. I mean, how unusual is that?
Just how unusual? Well, you see the massive shift from 2022. But look at history. Go all the way back. When was the last time that more people actually picked up a Democratic ballot, cast a ballot in a Democratic primary in Texas in a midterm? You have to go all the way back to 2002. So this could break an over 20-year stretch, my goodness gracious, whereby more people are actually voting on the Democratic side. And I will note, it really hasn't even been close since 2002. Overwhelmingly more people have been voting on the Republican side in Texas. And this year so far, more people are voting on the Democratic side.
This is different, very different with a capital V in this case. So we still have a few days to go here. What are the chances? What are the prediction markets saying about the chances this will stick?
Okay, so we're only really been talking about the early vote. But if you look at the Kalshi prediction market, what you actually see is the chance to have higher Texas primary turnout. Right now, the people putting their money where their mouth is actually slightly predict that there will be more votes cast on the Democratic side than on the Republican side, 60% to 40%, still a close race. But given that Republicans have been so outvoting Democrats in Texas, the idea that more people could actually vote on the Democratic side in Texas, again, as I said at the top, whoa.
So, okay, the cynic might say, okay, Harry, but this is just a primary. When there's a Democratic candidate and a Republican candidate on these ballots in November, who's going to remember this? It won't matter at all.
No. Primary turnout matters. When we're talking nationally, primary turnout matters. Take a look here. Okay, national primary turnout, edge. Which party voted more in primaries, Democrats or Republicans? And then went on to win the House. Look at this. The correlation, equal. Look at this. In 2006, more people voted in Democratic primaries than Republicans. Democrats won the House. 2010, GOP won the House. Same in 2014. 2018, more people voted on the Democratic side. More people then voted for Democrats in the fall. They won the House. And in 2022, Republicans gained that back in the primaries and then went on to win the House. 5 for 5 times. The fact that more people are voting on the Democratic side in Texas at this point, that translates nationally. Democrats, that would suggest well on their way to winning the House. And in a red state like Texas, as I said, mind blown.
John Cornyn running for re-election, facing a very difficult primary. What are the polls now showing?
Yeah, sometimes three's a crowd, okay? Three's a crowd. And what are we looking at here? I mean, oh my goodness. Normally, an incumbent should be favored, but in fact, at this point, John Cornyn is being challenged by two guys who have a pretty decent shot of knocking him off. Choice for Texas Senate GOP nominee Ken Paxton actually at the front here at 36%, though within the margin of error. Then you got Cornyn at 34%. Then you got Wesley Hunt at 26%. He's not taking on just one guy. He's taking on two guys, and they're both polling pretty gosh darn good. At this point, it seems like there's a pretty good chance John Cornyn may not make it to November. The other thing I will note is that there's a 50% plus one rule.
Exactly. The one thing that's clear from this poll is that no one is likely to win on Tuesday. No one gets to 50. It goes to a runoff. So what are the chances, if it is a runoff between the guy right now ahead and someone else? I mean, what are the chances that Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, ends up as the nominee?
Yeah, it looks like a pretty gosh darn good chance that Ken Paxton's going to be the Republican nominee. You can see it right here at prediction market odds. You look at Kalshi, look at this. Ken Paxton to be the GOP nominee. Look at this. 60% in January. Now 83% chance that Ken Paxton, the man right here on your screen right here, wins that GOP nomination. He may not win it now in March. He may not win it next Tuesday, but he'll eventually probably will win it when you go to the runoff in May.
That's what the prediction markets are saying now. So why do Democrats look at this, and why are Democrats smiling at this possibility?
Yeah, why are Democrats smiling at this possibility? It's not just because of a divisive Republican primary. As I said, three's a crowd sometimes. You know what the heck might happen here. But look at the general election polling. If, in fact, Ken Paxton is the Republican nominee versus Jasmine Crockett, Paxton ahead by only 1-2 points. My goodness gracious. Versus Tallarico, the same 1-2. There has not been a Democrat elected to the United States Senate in Texas since Lloyd Benson in 1988. And in a seat in which there was no Democratic incumbent, you have to go all the way back to 1970 when Lloyd Benson first won. And now it looks like a real possibility, if Ken Paxton is the Republican nominee, that Democrats could actually win in Texas.
They can sniff it. It's close here, but
close.
They're still not ahead. So this would obviously, if the Democrats were be able to flip Texas, it could maybe put the Senate in play. What are the predictions there?
Yeah, I mean, just again, take a look at the prediction markets. This is part of the reason why the GOP's chances have been falling. A year ago, according to Kalshi, it was 83% chance of a Republican win in the Senate. Now it's down to just a 59% chance. Democratic chances through the roof, 19% a year ago, 41% chance today.
Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, we have brand new numbers. Let's talk about what they're saying about the president.
You know, as Wisconsin and Pennsylvania go, so go the nation. And right now, the president is going down like Sonny Liston. What are we talking about here? Okay, Trump's net approval rating, key swing states in Wisconsin, down negative 10 points. Of course, he won that state by about a point back in 2024. How about Pennsylvania? Down to negative 15 points on the net approval rating in Pennsylvania, a state he won in 2016 and 2024, lost in 2020. As I said, as go Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, so goes the nation. In this case, Donald Trump is going down in both of them.
The last three elections, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, were basically 50-50 states.
You got it.
So when you see numbers like this, that's actually a fairly big deficit for the president there. What are these states saying about the president on the economy?
Yeah, okay. What is driving these numbers? What is driving President Trump down? It's his handling of the economy. It's this thing that we're seeing nationally impacting in the key swing states. Because just take a look here. Okay, Trump and the economy, swing state voters. Pennsylvania, Trump's economic disapproval rating, 56%. That doesn't work for Republicans. That doesn't work for Donald Trump either. How about in Wisconsin? Say Trump's policies raise inflation. Again, you get the majority, 53%. These numbers tracking very closely with how those voters feel overall in those two key swing states. And again, Donald Trump underwater, his economic disapproval, well more than a majority at this point. And you know, look at this. Say Trump's policies raise inflation 53%. How do you work with that if you're Donald Trump or Republican?
Now, in Pennsylvania, more than Wisconsin, there are some competitive House races. Pennsylvania could be really key in determining control of the House nationally. What are we seeing there?
Yeah, okay. So, you know, we talk about Donald Trump, but the question is always, does that make its way down ballot? Does that, in fact, impact the House races in Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? Just take a look here. Okay, U.S. House marches in Pennsylvania. 2024 results look very similar how they voted for president. Republicans won it by 2 points. But look at this. It's a different world. It's a different world. Look at this. The 2026 polling, Democrats ahead by 6 points on the generic ballot in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So what we're seeing up top is funneling its way down ballot. And these are the types of numbers that have to make Democrats jump for joy, because these are the types of numbers that suggest that they are, in fact, going to take back the House come November.
Have you ever pulled a muscle talking about polling?
I have never pulled a muscle. This is the most exercise I ever get.
Okay, let's talk about what the prediction markets are saying about these two states. There are governor's races in both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. What are some of the predictions?
Yeah, okay, the prediction markets, the Kalshi prediction markets, what do they say? They say Democrats are more than likely not to win both of them. Wisconsin looks like they'll retain it there, 70% chance. Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, of course, very likely going to be a 2028 Democratic candidate for president. Looks like he's going to win there as well, 91% chance. These are the types of numbers that you want to launch off for if you're going to run for president.
It's never too early to talk about the next presidential election. With us now is CNN chief data analyst Harry Enten. So we see Governor Newsom. He's got a book, I think, which actually publishes today. He's in the middle of the fray of possible Democratic contenders. So what do the polls say?
Yeah, they're all running, and this is just a downright clown car at this point on the Democratic side. I mean, just take a look here. Top choices for the 2028 Dem-Pres nominee. You have a leader, but it's not really a clear leader. It's within the margin of error. You have Newsom at 19%. Then you have former Vice President Kamala Harris at 18%. Quite a weak number for her, given that, of course, she was the nominee last time around. Pete Buttigieg, who, of course, has run before, 13%. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at 12%. This is just a total clown car. It is a total mess. There is no clear front runner at this particular point on the Democratic side. Who the heck knows who the nominee is going to be in 2 years?
It's been a long time since we've had a Democratic race like this.
Yeah, it has been a long time. This is very unusual for the Democratic side to not have a clear front runner at this point. National early poll leader at least 25%. Look at this. This year, we get the giant question mark. No one. In 2020, when there was no incumbent, it was Joe Biden who was there, Hillary Clinton in both 08 and 16, and Al Gore in both 2000 and 2004 at this point. We're at least at 25% of the early polls. You have to go all the way back from when I wasn't even in elementary school yet, not even in pre-K yet, to 1992. That was the last cycle in which there was no clear front-runner at this point. Very unusual.
Just to be clear, this isn't predicted because she didn't win in this primary and he didn't run. But this gives you a sense of a year out. So what about Newsom? What are the prediction markets saying his odds are?
Yeah, okay. So it seems to me that Gavin Newsom is flailing a little bit, at least compared to where he was prior. Because just take a look here. Okay, Chance Newsom is the 2028 Democratic nominee. 3 months ago, according to the cash prediction market, look at that. It was a 37% chance. Now it's just a 28%. Down he goes. He's definitely flailing a little bit. And I will note, John, that it also seems to me people are a little less interested in Gavin Newsom than they used to be. Look at this. Google searches for Gavin Newsom down 63% from the August peak. You remember back then it was when he started that social media, right, going after President Trump. There was a lot of interest from Democratic voters. But maybe that interest is waning off just a little bit. And of course, you don't necessarily want to wane it off just yet because I think we still have a lot of time till the votes.
Let's talk about tariffs because boy, did this set the president off, right? The Supreme Court made the ruling overturning most of the president's tariffs. He obviously is opposed to the ruling, but based on the polling, how did the American people feel going into it?
Yeah, I would just say, dude, President, what are you doing, man? The American people are with the Supreme Court. They're not with you. I mean, just take a look here. You can see it really clearly. Americans on SCOTUS and Trump's tariffs, the court should overturn. Look at this. Overall, 63%, the clear majority, want it overturned. And then you look at independents, 69%, a very nice 69% say that they want it overturned as well. And I will note the MU Law poll has actually sometimes had this independent higher into the 70s. This is actually a relatively low point, and it's still more than 2/3 of independents who say that the court should overturn those tariffs.
Supreme Court giving the people what they want. What they will say is they were giving the Constitution what it wants. How do voters rate the president, generally speaking, on tariffs?
Yeah, I would just say, to quote George Costanza, the Supreme Court did Donald Trump a favor, and he should stop all of this, but he's not. Why do I say that? Because just take a look here. Trump's net approval rating on trade and tariffs during his entire second term, every single poll that meets CNN standard for publication, every single one, he's underwater in all of them. All of them, dating back to last year, even when he was inaugurating, his overall net approval rating was positive. On trade, he was negative. There's not a single poll in which his net approval rating on trade and tariffs during his entire second term in which it was positive. Again, as I said, the court did Trump a favor. You might expect him to step off. But based upon going on Truth Social, his truths, he's doing anything but that.
Yeah, he seems pretty focused on tariffs.
Yeah.
And what do the American people say about where they want that focus?
Yeah, he seems really focused on tariffs. And the American people don't want that at all. They don't want that at all. Just take a look at this. The Trump administration is focusing too much on tariffs. 60%, 3 in 5 Americans saying the Trump administration is too focused on tariffs. This is where they want him focused. Too little on lowering prices, 74%. The clear majority of Americans believe that Trump is not focused on the economy, and too focused on tariffs.
Now, the Supreme Court in its ruling did not say what the government should do with the money they collected from these now illegal tariffs. What are the odds that a lower court says the American people or these businesses should get it back?
Yeah. All right. So at this point, take a look at this. Chance a court orders a tariff refund before the end of this year. It is now up to 77%, according to the folks at Kalshi, putting their money where their mouth is, way up from where we were on Thursday, 47 to 77%. Of course, we'll just have to wait and see.
Harry, how have Americans felt about how the president is doing so far?
I think it's so important to note when you look at Trump's net approval rating, it's been negative in the recent polling, but it just hasn't been the recent polling. Look at this. Look at how long his approval rating has been negative. It's been nearly a year. We're talking over 345 days in the red. And with independents, it's even been worse. I mean, overall, his net approval rating has been between -10 and -20 points in the past few polls, if you take an average of them. But if you look among independents, he's been floating at about -30 points oftentimes. The numbers with independents have been absolutely awful, and I'm just not quite sure how an administration can be politically alive when you have numbers that are that poor.
How about on the issue of the economy?
Yeah, okay. So why did Donald Trump get reelected back in 2024, right? It was the economy, right, James Carville? It's the economy, stupid. Although I'm with a smarty pants right here in Boris Sanchez. I know, I'm so kind. If you look at his net approval rating on the economy, look how long it's been negative for. Over 365 days it's been negative. It's been negative for over a year. So on the issue that he was so strong on in term number one, the issue that got him reelected to the White House, the American people have turned against him. And that is a big reason why, of course, they have turned against him overall. And of course, his numbers on inflation have been even worse than on the economy. And of course, inflation sunk the Joe Biden presidency, and it looks like it's sinking the Donald Trump presidency.
That is stunning, in part because Americans feel like affordability continues to be a problem. He also got elected not only on fighting inflation and that key issue of the economy, but also on immigration and closing the southern border. How does that data look?
You know, when Donald Trump first came down that escalator, right, all the way back in 2015, it feels like a lifetime ago. And in some ways it was. You know, it was almost 11 years ago at this point. Immigration, immigration, immigration. And what's so interesting here is the American people have turned against him on immigration as well. And in my opinion, it is all linked back to the ICE protests and, of course, ICE going into these big cities. Because take a look here. How long has his net approval been negative on immigration? Look at that. Since the Los Angeles ICE protests, that was the inflection point. That was the turning point. And now he's been negative, get this, for a very, very long period of time. It's been over 200 days at this point.
So over 200 days on immigration, over a year on the economy. How does this look going into this year's midterm per the prediction markets?
Okay, so I think what's so important to note here is the House, right? The House, the House, the House. And this, to me, gives the entire game away. If you look at the Kalshi prediction market, at this point, what we see is, look at this. We see that the Democrats are overwhelmingly favored to take back the U.S. House of Representatives. It has been right about 4 and 5 odds, 4 and 5 chance for a long period of time. And that's not much of a surprise when Donald Trump is as unpopular as he is, that, of course, there's going to be suffering down ballot for Republicans. And here's the other thing that I will note. It's not just the House that's in trouble.
Oh, wow.
It's the Senate as well. And that, to me, is so interesting because this entire time you look at that map, you say, okay, you know, Republicans, a lot of these seats Democrats need to win. They're in Republican states. But in fact, it turns out, according to Kalshi, we're dealing with right now Democrats' chances on the rise about 2 and 5.
So we've talking about the president and immigration. That's one thing. But as a partisan issue, it might be another.
Yeah, this, I think, is so important to note. After all the events in Los Angeles, after all the events in Minneapolis, after all the events of the last year on immigration, can Democrats actually take advantage on this issue? And a look at the polling suggests actually no, they're in a worse position than they were at this point during Donald Trump's first term. Take a look here. Trust which party more on immigration? In 2018, Democrats had an edge of about 6 points. You come over to this side of the screen now. Look at that. Republicans are the ones who actually have an edge on immigration. So this whole idea that Democrats are going to be able to take advantage of the immigration group, of the immigration issue, actually doesn't bear itself out in the polling, despite everything that's been going on. In fact, Democrats are in worse position than they were during Donald Trump's first term.
Yeah, maybe they don't like what Donald Trump, the president, is doing, but they don't think Democrats will do a better job.
Correct. They think Democrats will do a worse job on immigration than Republicans.
All right, what about border security in general?
Okay, border security in general. So this is immigration at large. What about border security? Look at this. Look at these numbers. Hello, party trusted more in border security. Again, at this point, Trump's terms. Look at this. In 2018, Republicans had a 13-point advantage. If anything, the advantage is a little bit larger now. Republicans up by 15 points. So when you put it all together, you put immigration with border security and the idea that Democrats will be able to take the ball and run away on it, the polling data suggests no. This is actually an issue that Republicans should be more comfortable running on than Democrats. Democrats running on immigration may actually be to the Republicans' advantage.
What about when you compare President Trump with former President Biden?
Yeah, okay. So, we speak about President Trump's approval rating, right, on immigration not being as high as it once was. But I'll tell you who the heck it's a lot higher than at this point in his term, and that's the predecessor, Joe Biden. Look at this, approval on immigration at this point in presidency. Biden was at just 34%. Donald Trump looks a whole heck of a lot lot better when you compare him to the alternative at 45%. And this, I think, is the big takeaway from this segment, which is you can't just look at something in isolation. You have to compare it to the alternative. And in this particular case, when you take a look at immigration and you compare Republicans to the alternative Democrats, this is an issue that Republicans should really like, and President Trump should like the comparison to Joe Biden.
Joining us now with more on the New York City mayor's growing popularity.
Yeah.
Walk us through.
Yeah, okay. You know, President Trump is not the only one who gets the vapors when it comes to Zohran Mamdani. I mean, my goodness gracious, he likes popular politicians. Here's a popular politician for you. Take a look here. Mamdani's net favorable rating in New York City in September of 2025, plus 14 points. December of 2025, plus 38. Now, look at this, plus 48 points. A more popular mayor to start off than either of his two Democratic predecessors, either Eric Adams or Bill de Blasio. The most popular Democrat in New York City in a generation. And President Trump, who likes to get on board with popular politicians, is getting on board right now with this guy.
Getting on board with this guy. Okay, so what about statewide?
Yeah.
What are we seeing statewide?
Okay, so you know what? A lot of Republicans were like, oh, we're going to run statewide in New York and run against Zohran Mamdani. There's a slight problem with that, and that is Zohran Mamdani isn't just popular in New York City. He's actually the most popular Democrat statewide. Take a look at this. Net favorable of New York Democrats statewide. Look at this. Zohran Mamdani with a positive net favorable rating of plus 16 points. More popular than Kristen Gillibrand at plus 12. More popular than Kathy Hochul at plus 9. More popular than Chuck Schumer at minus 7. The bottom line is this. Zohran Mamdani is the most popular Democrat in the state of New York right now. Republicans are not going to be able to run against him in the midterms because the bottom line is this. He's popular not just in his home city, but he's popular in New York State as well.
Okay, but what about the popularity with the president? What is it that President Trump seems to like about him?
Yeah, okay. So I think what he likes about him is the fact that he is very much the type of politician who is able to attract the media attention in the same way while sticking with what he believes is right? You know, Donald Trump has always been this type of politician who goes out there, says a whole heck of a lot of things, but then is still able to maintain his base. And Zohran Mamdani is the type of guy who's been able to bring in President Trump, but also has basically been sticking to his campaign platform. I mean, take a look at this. Chance Mamdani freezes the rent, the thing he had run on. Look at this. According to the prediction markets, the Kalshi prediction market this year, there's still an 81% chance that Zohran Mamdani actually freezes the rent. So he is maintaining his popularity citywide. You see him right here. It's been going up like a rocket. He is maintaining, in fact, being the most popular Democrat in the state of New York right here, plus 16 points. And he is doing so while also at this point looking like he is going to actually keep that big campaign promise of freezing the rent. At this point, as I said, President Trump isn't the only one who has the vapors, because the bottom line is this. A lot of New Yorkers have the vapors about Zohran Mamdani as well, as he is sticking to his quite progressive platform.
What's your take with what you're looking at on how people are feeling about how Trump is doing in this moment?
Yeah, okay. I would borrow the phrasing of Tony Blair, of course, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, saying weak. It was weak over there in the United Kingdom. It is weak here in the United States when it comes to President Trump. Okay, Trump's net approval rating. Look at all the pre-SOTUS polls, the State of the Union. Look at this. Okay, we're at this point. Look at that. Negative 27 points. My goodness gracious, the snow is up to the knees here in New York City, and Trump seems to be well underneath it at this point. Compare that to where he was in 2020, 2019, and 2018 in term one going into those State of the Unions. Minus 10, way lower now. Minus 15, way lower now. Minus 15, way lower now. The bottom line is this. Donald Trump has never been weaker going into a State of the Union address, according to our CNN polling, than he is right now, and weaker by a considerable amount.
So this is his first term to his second term. How does it compare to other presidents at this point in their second term, though?
Yeah, okay. It's not just that Donald Trump is breaking records compared to himself when it comes to State of the Unions. He's breaking records compared to other presidents at this point going into a State of the Union. What are we talking about? Look at all the 21st century presidents on your screen right here. About at this point in his second term going into the State of the Union. Trump at minus 27 points. Obama was at minus 15 points. George W. Bush was at minus 11 points. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to know that minus 27 points is considerably lower than minus 15 or minus 11. So Trump isn't just weaker than he's ever been going into a State of the Union address. He is weaker than any other president this century going into a State of the Union address at this point in their second term.
You're talking about it all throughout the show as we're going through these numbers, but talk about what is driving this drop for the president.
What is driving this drop? I said record was the name of the game when it came to this segment, right? Talking about the lowest Trump has ever been going into the State of the Union, the lowest that any president has been this century going into a State of the Union at this point in their presidency. It is also the weakest that Donald Trump has ever been with independents. Look at this drop. We've been talking about it the past few months. At this point, a year ago, Donald Trump was at minus 13 points. Look at this, minus 47 points among independents, the lowest Donald Trump has ever been in either of his 2 terms as president with independents. That is driving these numbers. When you're 47 points underwater with independents, that's the name of the game. You can't be above water overall, and that's why Donald Trump is near record lows overall and the lowest he's ever been going into a State of the Union address.
Does the State of the Union address traditionally move numbers?
State of the Union addresses, simply put, usually do diddly squat. Diddly do. Why do I say that? Because take a look here. Okay, average shift in approval rating post State of the Union address since 1977. The average president has seen a shift of 0.0000 points when it comes to their approval rating. You look back at Trump's first term, well, I guess it's a shift of 1 point, but when it's 0 or 1 point, you know that State of the Unions, simply put, don't really move the needle. To quote Stephen A. Smith, we don't care as an American public. We don't care.
That said, do you see any evidence that it could be different for Donald Trump this time?
Yeah, okay. So you know what? History is one thing, right? But the idea is, Donald Trump's a unique figure in American politics. He can do things that other people can't. But if you look at our post-poll, right, after the State of the Union, I simply put don't see it for him. Why do I say that? Okay, view of Trump's speech to Congress, very positive. Among speech viewers who are more Republican than the electorate overall, this was actually the least well-received speech. We're talking about 38% of speech viewers who viewed the speech very positive, and that is lower than in 2025 when it was 44%, lower than in 2019 when it was 59%, lower than in 2018 when it was 48%, and lower than it was in 2017 when it was 57%. The bottom line is this. State of the Union addresses, simply put, do not move, traditionally speaking, the American electorate. And this Trump speech, especially so, is not likely to move things because, simply put, it was the least well-received one among speech viewers of any of the speeches that Donald John Trump has given to a joint session of Congress.
So this was of people who were watching the speech. And we talked a lot about the CNN polling going into the speech of the public's view of his approval rating, which was not good.
No.
So where does this leave the president?
Yeah, okay, where does this leave the president? This is the key thing. Look, Donald Trump has been underwater for nearly a year now, a negative net approval rating. Every day in my aggregate since March 12th, 2025, that is 351 days in a row. Look, the bottom line is this. Donald Trump went into the speech not well liked, very much to a near historic degree, for any president at this point in their second term. And based upon the reaction last night, I see no reason to think that Donald Trump won't continue to be swimming in the deep blue sea, well underwater.
He's telling us it's going to be long, so it could be really long.
It could be the greatest, longest speech in American history. I'm going to paraphrase my cousin Vinny when I heard that Trump was going to give a long speech. What a freaking surprise that was, because just take a look. Hello, President addresses to Congress. The average for presidents since 1964, 54 minutes. Donald Trump, over the course of his 2 presidencies, look at this, 80 minutes. He goes on average more than 26 minutes, more than 25 minutes longer than the average president. So when he says, it's going to be a long one, well, that fits with history, Sarah Seidner.
I thought you were going to do the Marissa Tomei thing. My biological clock is ticking like this. Anyway, is there any sign that Trump's speeches are actually, though, getting shorter? Obviously, he says this one's going to be long, but shorter over time or no?
No. There's no sign that it's getting shorter. He's telegraphing exactly what's been happening in the past, because why don't we just take a look here? Hello, President addresses to Congress. The average speech, 55 minutes. Look at this one. The last one was more than an hour and a half, blew past the previous record belonging to William Jefferson Clinton. Look at this, 99 minutes. He went 99 minutes last year, which wasn't technically a State of the Union address, by the way, but it was still an address to a joint session of Congress. So we'll see if he's able to break the record for any address to a joint session of Congress that he himself set a year ago. Donald Trump likes to break records, and when it comes to making us listen to him for a longer period of time, he does a very good job of breaking those records.
He's going longer while people have shorter attention spans. So who is going to be watching this exactly? Because we know some Democrats are not even going to show up for this in person. Who typically watches State of the Union speeches?
Yeah, for Democrats, sometimes less is more when it comes to President Trump. But for Republicans, sometimes more is more. And those are the people who actually tune in to watch these speeches. It's the partisan crowd. He's not actually going after independents. He's talking to his base, and we can see that from last year, right? Okay, share in 2025 who identified as GOP. Look at this. Watch Trump's speech to Congress. 48% of those were Republicans, compared to just 32% of Americans overall. So what you're dealing with is an audience. You're speaking to the home crowd, and the home crowd loves to hear Donald Trump talk, and that is probably what he'll be doing tonight, is talking to that home crowd and go on for a very, very long period of time. It's Trump hour when it comes to State of the Union. If Donald Trump likes to do one thing, it's he likes to hear himself talk. And as someone who likes to hear himself talk, I can empathize with the man.